Hey everyone, this is Jack Allwild with another money episode. Today we have very special guest Hugo Alonso from the Stay Winning Podcast. You can find him at Stay Winning Pod on YouTube, X, and Instagram. Hugo, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, Jack? Appreciate the energy on the introduction. How you doing?
So Hugo, I'm doing well. I discovered you on X, and then I randomly sat down next to you at a table at FinCon. So that was pretty cool in New Orleans.
You know what? That was really neat, right? Because we knew each other through X, and then we're just talking real estate, and then when we introduced our names, I'm like, "Oh, that's you,"
Yeah,
and I thought that was pretty cool. So small finance world, but it was really nice to also meet you in person. Thank you for supporting me on X and
yeah.
pushing great content out there.
Yeah, I gotta say for the listeners that are even on the edge of looking to FinCon, I would recommend it. I've always enjoyed my times at FinCon. That was my third one.
Oh, your third one. Wow, that was my second one. And yes, for
Yeah,
anyone listening, I do recommend that. The connections you make there, the network you make there is priceless. And
yeah,
then the classes are just a bonus on them.
yeah,
If you're looking at
absolutely.
making if you're looking at making financial content, the classes are a great bonus.
So Hugo, I thought we could talk about the flip that we discussed at FinCon a little bit, but before that, in your podcast, but before that, I like to ask everyone, what was your relationship with money like growing up?
I would like to say there's no relationship with money growing up because there was no money. There was a point in my childhood where I even asked my parents, like, why do we have a fridge if there's like no food there, you know? Um, so I would say there was a lot of money that was lacking. But if there was like a turning point for me, money wise, in my young age was when I had to put my dog to sleep. So I was 1 month into my job. As soon as I turned 15, the next month I was working because that's legally when you're allowed to put at least 15 hours a week. So I had my first paycheck. My dog was sick. I took him to the vet, and it was $700 just to start treatment, and it wasn't guaranteed. And my paycheck was about 280 something.
Wow.
Very, very small, like somewhere in the 200 range. And the second best choice or the second option on the table was to put him to sleep for like about 180 bucks. And that was very painful to me. Um, I grew up most of my childhood in a fatherless home. So my dog literally was my best friend. Like we would play soccer together. You know, he would pull me when I was riding the bike. Tyler, it was great. But it was very painful to say goodbye to him. And it sucked that my money only had so much power. And that was a turning point for me when I was like, I don't want to feel like this again. I don't want to be in a position where a decision has to be made for me because I don't have the financial resources to decide how I want to proceed. So before then, money was pretty empty. My only relationship or my only vision of money that I saw was when the landlord came to collect rent in her brand new Hummer, and then playing soccer as well. When I would go play soccer, I was lucky enough where some of these soccer moms would pick me up. I was one city over, and they would take me to these nicer neighborhoods to go play soccer, and I would see how happy everyone was in all these bougier um, neighborhoods where you saw that there was money. So that helped me aspire to there being something outside of my neighborhood, there being something more than just what I was used to in my neighborhood. But I would say that dog event was probably the biggest one that got me into a financial literacy route.
Dang. So, I mean, 15 years old, that's pretty young to have to make a decision like that. I mean, so when you say it got you on the financial literacy route, like what did that look like?
A lot of it was doing my own research actually, and I was fortunate enough to start working at the bank at age 18.
Oh,
So that's the good thing about starting to work early. When you're 15, 16, 17, by the time you're 18, you already have a resume. And most of my, most other people that are going to college don't have that kind of resume. So I was fortunate to start working at the bank, and the bank is what teaches you all the basic, right? This is a savings account. This is how a CD account works. This is how a brokerage account works. So I was on the customer service side. So everyone that would call in, and I saw how much money they had, and
wow.
they would call in to transfer money to make a mortgage payment. I mean, I was a customer service guy, but I was asking them, hey, do you mind me asking how much you put down for your mortgage? Is this a primary property or an investment property? Because I at least understood the terms through training.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, I understood how to put those terms to work.
What were you finding from those calls? Were there any some common threads, some common themes that you were noticing early on?
Yeah, a lot of them were saying it's best to proceed with a primary property first
Okay.
instead of an investment property. See, the reason I was already thinking about or looking at investment properties was because everything was so pricey in California and everything everywhere else just looked so much cheaper. Even when I travel today, everything looks so much cheaper.
Yeah.
The locals where I go don't feel like that. Like when I was in Fort Worth, I was like, "Oh, gas is only like three something here. That's so cheap." And they're like, "No, that's expensive. It was like $1." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, yeah.
But looking from California, everything just seems so much more affordable. But the primary theme was, yeah, go with your primary property first. And that's when I learned that, hey, if I go with my primary property first, the down payment is actually smaller. A lot of people don't know this. Actually, I never said it, so I'm glad I can share this with your audience, Jack, because I think it's a pretty neat moment. I used all my life savings to buy my first property when I was 24 years old. It was my last semester of college, and I didn't have any money for cap and gown to graduate that spring. So
Wow.
I closed in April of that year, and I had to postpone my graduation to August, so the summer instead. So I have no pictures of me in cap and gown and no pictures of me walking across the stage. But I have no regrets on that. Luckily, AI could put me in a cap and gown now, and I
There
can
you
say
go. Yeah,
that.
yeah, and then, you had a priority list and you stuck to it.
Yes, for sure.
So, dang. So, I mean, speaking of California, I mean, when you and other investors or just people living in California, I'm kind of curious. I mean, do you ever have an inkling to move out of California?
I do actually, but it's not necessarily financial. It's mostly I
Uh-huh.
don't want to raise my kids here. So
Interesting.
when the kids come, I definitely don't want them to grow up in California. But for anyone else who has a family and other mouths to feed and other things to consider, because it's not just about having kids. Now it's like their healthcare. Now it's their college. Now it's their daycare. I do see a lot of benefits and understand why a lot of people leave California. Um, but for the time being, I think I'm still going to be here for 2 or 3 years. However, I am done buying property in California.
Yeah.
Um, Mostly I just focus on fix and flips now. But eventually, when the kids come, I do want to raise them outside of California.
For the listeners, can you give us a macro view of what your portfolio looks like in terms of real estate?
Yeah, it's not that huge. It's so I have one rental property in northern Orange County. So that's about 4 miles west of Disneyland.
Ah,
That's a long-term rental. That was my primary property and then became a long-term rental. I have
cool.
my primary property in South Orange County. So it's the city neighboring Laguna Beach. Just throwing that name out there because I figured people might know that a little more. And then I've done one flip last year. That was a nice chunk of change profit. I'm currently working on a second flip now. So if we were to take all that into account, we're probably looking at like 3.1 million.
Wow.
However, probably like 1.4 million is like what I actually hold outside of the
Hmm.
flips.
Okay. Well, speaking of the flips, how did you decide to do a flip? What made you want to do it? And let's get into that.
Yeah, I was actually very blessed with the opportunity. So I've used the same realtor um, since 24. He was about 21 at that time.
Okay.
And we just stayed friends ever since. So, a lot of people approach me to buy and sell with them, but I'm loyal like that when it comes to business and money relationships. So he got his broker's license. He's been doing, selling real estate for past a decade now, and he's gone into flips. And if there was someone I can trust with money, it would be him. And to trust someone with 100 grand, like that's not very easy. So I'm very blessed to be able to trust someone like that who's in the game. And number two, I'm very blessed that these doors have opened for me. See, if you take a look at where you can put your money, like if you go online and just Google this, hey, where can I put my capital to flip real estate? A lot of these companies won't even talk to you unless you're an accredited investor.
Mhm.
So once you're an accredited investor, these additional investment vehicles open up to you that aren't open to everyday
Yeah.
people, right? And that's, we could talk this maybe some other time, but that's when my whole passion with Web3 and blockchain technology comes in, how it can eliminate certain roadblocks for people. I mean, Web3 just levels up the playing field, but maybe that's for another
Hmm.
time.
No,
So
I think that's really good because I actually was exposed to, I don't know if you've heard of Private Money Club, but this is a platform Chris Naugle came out with that basically is a marketplace for borrowers and lenders that cuts
mm,
out a lot of, I think, the friction that you're speaking of
wow,
only allowing accredited investors for some of these things. And yeah, if you, you know, want to go raise money, you can go on there, post the deal, say what guarantees you'll give, you know, will be backed by the property. Will you give a personal guarantee? Will you put, you know, the lender on your life insurance or things like that, and vice versa. But it's a pretty
wow.
cool tool. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you can get very creative in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyone listening, I'll be checking it out. So sounds like anyone interested might check that out too. It sounds really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So for this flip, that guy kind of like facilitated a lot of the flip. You kind of you put up the money, and how did they pay you back?
Yeah, so I put up the money. These flips are in LA County, so it's the county over where I'm located. Some of these are like 40 minutes, an hour drive away, which I can still go ahead and drive and check out. So the money I wire him goes towards the cash to close.
Uh,
And then from there, they can go ahead and get the keys and start fixing it up. So he already has a team going on. And the good thing is that he actually shows me a couple of properties that he's working on. And then I can do my own research and be like, okay, I want to go ahead and invest in this one. So the things I look at, and I know we talked this a little bit off camera, and we figured it might be helpful for the audience listening. So I'm looking at the square footage of it. I'm looking at what other properties are going in that same zip code, even in that same street. However, LA, the city, not the county, is very, very tricky. You can have a $500,000 home on the same block as like a $1.5 million home. Um, so LA is a little tricky, but the other surrounding cities and the rest of LA County, it's easier to kind of predict. Okay, if we put X amount, these are going for this. And at that time, there was still bid wars going on. I mean, the inventory was just so low. So even if you see on X every day that there's no money, I mean, there's people with money. Like there's people buying houses in cash for like 800 grand out there. And I'm like,
yeah.
wow, where you guys at? Like I probably just walked by you at Starbucks. I didn't even know. Um, so I go look at the property and I actually can tell if we're able to expand half a bathroom to a second bathroom, because that's going to give you your best rate of return. Is the kitchen upgradable? Because sometimes there's these that I get presented and the kitchen's already fixed up. And I'm like, well, a lot of times your best return is on the kitchen, or
Mhm.
a lot of times your best return, the second best return is on the bathroom, right? So we have the square footage to expand the bathroom from half a bathroom to a full bath, and now we have two full baths. Like that's going to push up the value of the property a lot, especially the rest on the block don't have that. I mean, there was a time where 3 bedroom, one bath was like very normal to build, right? Maybe
Mhm.
somewhere in the 70s, maybe the 60s, but like nowadays, you need 2 bathrooms. So
Yeah.
try to use that as a selling point as well. Compare the previous sales that took place earlier in the year and divide it by the square footage, and then take the average. Okay, the average of these three that sold in the last 3 months compared to the square footage we have, but we have an extra bathroom. Okay, cool. And that one doesn't have an upgraded kitchen. So it is true. Buy the ugliest house on the block. The first one I flipped, there was a tree growing inside the living room.
Wow.
There was no one living there because I know a lot of people hate fix and flippers. So I just want to say no one was living there. No one got kicked out. It was just a raccoon family that was there. So I just want to make that clear. And then on the good side, I like the jobs that he creates. He creates a lot of jobs. It pumps up so much money into the economy. I mean, everyone else's house on the block goes up in value when this one sells because it just lifts up the whole block. So just want to make sure everyone sees the highlights and the positive of doing fix and flips, aside from just looking at, oh, greedy profit out there and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Cool. So how's the second flip look? Like what can you kind of walk us through how that one pans
Oh,
out?
this, yeah, the second flip. I'm actually more excited about this one, because this one, the square footage is bigger.
Okay.
So there's more room to get creative with it. Um, and it's in a better school district. So
Okay.
when it comes to these family homes, so we're talking 3 bedroom, 2 bath and up, school district is very important. And it's in Monrovia, California. So it's one of the nicer parts of the East LA area. And a lot of good food there. So and close to the freeways. I'm very excited about that. The other comps that we were looking at were like $250,000 over
Hmm.
um, what we were thinking of even listing it for. So
Okay.
we
Wow.
yeah, so I'm very excited about that one. So the way it works, just what we talked about off camera, is I send the wire. That is the cash to close, right? So now the house is 500K. Now the balance is 400K, right? We fix it up, and they have the whole team. So my partners have the whole team, and then when we sell it, I get my original 100K back plus whatever the profits are, and we split it 3 ways.
Okay. So this is like an equity split. It's not like
Yes,
you're not getting paid like monthly, just installments.
correct.
This
Yes.
is an equity split. Cool. Okay. And will you said this one's a little bigger. Is the plan to like add a bedroom, add a bathroom, like you were kind of talking about on this one?
Yeah, you can actually connect the bathroom to the bedroom and call it a master.
Okay.
So I thought it was pretty neat. Sometimes I look at these, I'm like, what were they thinking when they were building these like 50 years ago? Like it didn't make any sense. But so now now we tore down a wall, so now you can call it an open floor plan and it looks way more modern. So that was the
Sweet.
exciting part of it.
Sweet. Dang. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, it is very cool. It's pretty passive. I know on X, Jack, you and I see a lot of times that real estate isn't passive.
Yeah.
But I am very blessed, and I want to say the contrary. I think it's actually very passive for me. Um, Long-term rental wise or fix and flip, it is possible to have them cash flow for you
Mhm.
very passively.
I mean, I think the cool thing about what you're discussing is just how important the relationships are, because you've basically tapped into these relationships that know how to do all of these, you know, these value add projects. And yeah, it sounds pretty passive for you. So that's, a long-term mindset and making those relationships really paying off for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. If there's something we should highlight here is relationships. I preach a lot on my podcast that your network is your net worth, and I hope people see that as a clear example of what that is. So surrounding yourself with people that are passionate and want to better themselves, you're automatically going to be passionate and want to better yourself in whatever it is. So you're just hanging out with soccer players, or you want to be a pro soccer player, it's gonna go well. If you want to hang out with millionaires, you're gonna be the next millionaire. Like that's just how it works.
Cool. Well, let's transition a little. I want to hear a little bit about your podcast. What caused you to start that? I think I saw it's like 26 in the world now in financial literacy. Tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. Thank you so much. So we're now the number 26 podcast in financial literacy in the world. That makes us number 4 out of California. So that's something I'm very excited about, especially because I did it without any guests. I did it without a camera, and I did it without a studio. So what got me interested in that is I saw that I was the go-to person a lot of times when it came to money questions with my peers. And I've always been complimented on my voice. A lot of times I figured that's why I had a job at the bank. It was mostly just jobs over the phone at the bank. So decided to play my strengths and be like, hey, let's put this information out there. I don't know everything, but I may know more than other people. And I'm going to learn along the way and meet the right people that I eventually going to learn from as well. So I decided to put that out there and just help people. Um, and the big drive behind that was I didn't have the best cards on the table when I was born, right? Like I come from an immigrant family. My parents split up when I was about 12, and we were really, really poor. But I'm very happy of how my life has turned out and how it is right now. Like wealth is time now. So I do get a lot to decide. Have a lot to say of who I spend my time with, how I spend my time with, where I spend my time. And I mean, you probably see on X, it's very popular to have the victim mindset on X or on TikTok and just make those videos about how everything's so hard and everything's so
Mhm.
expensive. But I'm like, no, wait a minute. Let me show you how to win. If I can win with no resources, you know what I mean? With parents that didn't speak English, parents that didn't even drive a car. Um, if I can overcome all that and succeed, just think about how other people can, with better resources, can accomplish it, right? So two parents, their own bedroom, internet access, computer access. Like I didn't have all that. So if I can win, if I can teach people how to win with what I had, it's like, look at how much more you could win with the resources that you do have. Um, and the second part was I always invest my money as if I'm going to have kids one day because I understand the decisions I make today are going to determine the quality of life my children are going to be born into, right? So the property I live in right now, if I have a kid right now, I'm not scared because I chose one of the top 10 safest neighborhoods in California, one of the top 10 school districts in California, right? So it's my decisions that are going to create that quality of life for them. Like they can play outside without me having to worry about it. They can walk to school without me having to worry about it. And I know they're going to get a quality education without me having to think more than that. So I do make a lot of my investment decisions based on I'm going to have kids one day. How are they going to be impacted? Um, and that was the whole drive behind the podcast. It's helping people break those chains of poverty, be that one person that's going to change what Dave Ramsey calls your family tree, be that one person that's going to, that plants a seed. So one generation, two, even three generations from now, everyone's sitting in the shade and just having the time of their life and being happy. There's so much negativity in the world, but it's like, I want people to realize, and with the podcast, it's like, there's so many things we have control over, right? So we can blame the government on student loans. Why they let an 18-year-old like get into student loan debt? But at the same time, it's like, hey, wait a minute. You can decide where to apply for a job. There's companies that will pay for your tuition, right? Like Amazon. Let's look at Amazon, for example. Amazon is nationwide. Everyone can get that benefit with Amazon. There's jobs that don't require experience at Amazon at their warehouses. You do your time there and they'll pay for your tuition. That's a decision that you can make. So when you graduate college, you're not in 50, 60, $100,000 in student loan debt complaining how you can no longer afford a house. So I noticed that a lot of the problems the US has can be traced down to financial literacy. So take a look at this, right? If you look at the divorce rate in the US, it's one of the highest in the whole Western world. And a lot of times, the reason for divorce is money problems. Money problems, or just any problems, tend to stem from the lack of financial literacy, right? Um, so now you have the number one country with the most kids growing up in a single family home. And when you look at all these statistics of crime, who's in the prison system, who has mental illnesses, who's homeless, most of the time, the common denominator is a single parent family home. So when I focus on what's in my control is let me put this information out there and 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 see what that positive information and what that accurate information can do to not have that cycle repeating. Um, I didn't have a go-to resource growing up when it came to money. And now that I look at it, I'm actually thankful that that was the case because when I did my own research, I was able to find what was real, what was true, and not just believing, I was able to question things
Mhm.
versus just taking someone's word and believing what that is. So that's a little bit about why the podcast started and what the goal is for it. I definitely want to help people break the chains of poverty. If I can win with those amount of resources, a lot of people can win now with more abundant resources that they're born into.
When you were self-educating yourself on financial literacy, was there anything that stands out on that is kind of like a myth?
Yeah, it's work hard, man. Work hard is such a lie.
Interesting. Okay.
It's not that it's a dismiss, just that, and with the internet now. Well, let me rephrase it. At one point in time, working hard was the right answer because at one point in time, you only needed one parent to make income. You know, Probably the early 90s was like the last time that could realistically be done, even in California. So work hard is probably one of the myths that I would say out there because now with the internet, it's about working smarter. See, you and me, we need 8 hours a day to sleep, probably another 1 or 2 hours to eat and
Mhm.
do everything else, right? So that leaves us with like a very limited amount of time. But the internet is 24/7. Crypto is 24/7. So if you can use these tools to work for you, now you're working smarter. You're not necessarily working harder. You're not doing overtime because you don't need to. The internet is doing the overtime for you. The crypto is doing the overtime for you. So I would say that's one of the myths. Work harder. Yeah, maybe when you're in your
Interesting.
20s, I would say work your ass off while you're in your 20s. Like, really do. I'm sure you remember Jack being 21. You can go out drinking until 3 a.m. and then be at work at 6 a.m. when you're in your 20s. So if you're in your 20s and you're listening, yeah, take advantage, work hard, work your ass off. But eventually you can put that money to work for you. And then once that money works for you and you create those multiple streams of income, I mean, by the time you're in your 40s, you're just chilling. So I would say that's the myth. Work hard. It's work smarter.
Interesting.
Definitely work smarter by having your money work for you and using resources like the internet or crypto, anything else that's 24/7.
Interesting. So when you say let crypto work for you, what are you using crypto for? I'm kind of curious.
See, you can actually stake your crypto. So in traditional fiat, right, you have a CD that pays you 6%, but you have to lock it for a certain period of time. Now with blockchain technology, and this we were talking about a little offline, it levels up that playing field. You can get 7% returns without having to lock in your funds. You can also directly lend to people without having to go through a middleman or all these contracts, all these legal terminology. And then you can flip, just like I'm flipping real estate, you can flip NFTs. You
Mhm.
get in the NFT and then you just list it for sale, 2, 3 times its price, and then just wait. By the time you wake up, someone bought it, someone sold it because of those smart contracts.
Mhm.
So it's already encrypted in the blockchain. Um, and that's just some examples of how you could put your money to work for you. You could even lend out your NFTs um,
Interesting.
for whatever
Yeah,
kind of crypto you want.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Bitcoin fan, but I haven't really got into some of these others. But I always come back to like, have you ever had an issue with like you lending something out and then not getting paid back? Because like the contracts part is something that I'm kind of still like wondering, like, who do you go to if you have an issue with if like lending, your crypto out?
So you lend your crypto out. A lot of times people use their NFT as collateral.
Okay.
So I'm sure right now one of the biggest brands for NFTs out there is Pudgy Penguins. So I want to go borrow $50,000 in Bitcoin. I'm gonna be like, well, here's my Pudgy Penguin as collateral. And if I don't pay you back by X amount of time with the interest, then you get to keep that Pudgy Penguin.
Interesting. What are the typical interest rates on when you're lending crypto? Is it like how much of a spread is it typically on like, your savings account or treasury?
Oh, it varies just based on the stake pools, but
Uh-huh.
it is, I'm finding it's higher than the traditional fiats.
Okay.
The last video I posted on my YouTube channel was about CD accounts, and the highest one was paying 5.75. The lowest one I see right now in crypto, if you want to do that, is about 7.2%.
Okay.
Yeah, you just have to
Interesting.
take the risk if, the crypto's going up or down.
Well, Hugo, as we're winding down, I do like to ask, what is the best and worst personal finance advice you've heard or received? You might have already mentioned it, but well, let's hear it.
The best and worst personal finance advice?
Yeah.
So the worst one is save your money. Um, I would say that's the worst one for sure. It doesn't go anywhere. It just loses value if you save it. Um, it doesn't accumulate fast enough, right? So people say, "Oh, I'm saving up for a house."
Mhm.
Well, guess what? 3 years haven't gone by. Now you need 40% more than
Yeah.
when you originally thought you needed to save. That's why I would say it's the worst financial advice. The best financial advice I have received is the power of LLCs. Is
Okay.
is is See, there's only one of you, Jack, and there's only one of me, right? And in this world, a lot of times, at least to the big money players, we're nothing but a number, and that number is your credit score. But we only get one, right? If you file bankruptcy, that's 17 years that you have no power play,
Hmm.
right? If you fall behind on a payment, that's another year or two where you have no power play. So I'm trying to get another mortgage loan, for example. If I missed a payment in the last year, I'm not going to get another mortgage loan. So I would say that's the best advice is when you start an LLC, it's its own entity with its own tax ID that it could also operate as a person, as an own property, sign off papers. And you can have as many LLCs as you want. and each one with their own tax IDs, right? So let's say we have 5 YouTube channels,
Mhm.
right? That's each one could be its own LLC, each one with its own stream of income. And again, this goes back to the working smarter part, right? You post this video up, we record it once. This is us working hard right now, but eventually it's going to be working smarter for you because it's going to be up online for years, years, and years. Then you get monetized on YouTube, and it's just making you money every time someone watches it and doesn't skip through the ads, right? uh, so you can use LLCs as an investment vehicle because each one has its own tax ID. So if you mess up your credit, it's one of you. That's it. Like you're done. Like you got to pay the time price. But with LLCs, one, you can protect your assets. Two, each one can borrow credit, borrow loans, get credit cards, and then that is more purchasing power, more capital power that you can put to work for you. So if you have three, four, five of those, I mean, you just multiplied yourself 5 different times. So now you're working smarter and not harder. And that
Interesting.
credit is going to give you purchasing power. That purchasing power is going to open these doors for investments. Those investments are going to give you returns. And now you're just working smarter. Um, but yeah, just don't want to miscommunicate the message. You will need to work hard at first, but there are ways where you can go ahead and have it work and work smarter. So I recently got monetized on YouTube, and I see you're growing your channel too. So congratulations.
Thanks.
But that hill, it's a very steep mountain to
It's
climb.
tough. Yeah.
The 1,000 subscribers, the 4,000 watch hours is very, very steep. That is super hard. So Jack, you are working hard to grow your channel, and you know how hard it is. But now that I met those requirements, now I'm just working smarter, right? I realized, okay, if I upload, if I have 1,000 videos up, right? They each make me 10 cents a day. That's $100 a day. That's 3,000 bucks a month. That's my mortgage payment,
Mhm.
right? There comes that working smarter part. So I would say that's the best financial advice I received was having to understand the power of LLCs and protecting your assets, protecting yourself, and multiplying yourself to get more purchasing power and more investment power.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think of LLCs more on the asset protection side. Because I don't know where I've heard this, but I remember hearing from a real estate investor, once you
Yeah.
get like I think he said like a half a million normally, like in equity, maybe start another LLC to protect that basket of real estate. So that's kind of how I viewed it, but that's interesting to hear about the credit scores too.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say it was the real estate side because you're right. It's sold to real estate investors first as asset protection, right?
Hmm.
Someone slips
Yeah.
and falls on your property, you're like, well, the LLC just owns that one property.
Hmm.
The rest of my portfolio is secure. So that's a great example and a great tool that you can use it for. But now you can. I hope the audience takes the message where you can use that to also make it work for you.
Cool. I mean, can you share like how many different LLCs do you currently have?
Oh, just two right now. I'm
Two?
currently
Okay.
working on. Yeah, I'll probably do two more this year. But
Okay.
right now it's just two.
So do you
Um,
have it like your social media, like YouTube stuff in one and then like real estate in the other or
yeah, so Stay Winning Podcast LLC is one LLC that's the operating company. Then I have the holding company that holds the podcast LLC. And then I was going to go and put one for my rental property as an LLC. Just holding back on it though because California charges you 800 a month just to rent. I mean 800 a
what?
year
What?
just to
Okay.
yeah
Wow.
just to register your LLC, right? So um, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to put the 800 up right now to
Yeah.
to go ahead and get that started. But those are the two I have now. I do have additional business ideas I want to venture into, and I think I'll put two additional ones this year, especially because it does help me out. I noticed it really helped me out with tax write-offs.
Hmm.
Um, so when I did my 2022 taxes, it was probably the first time in like 11 years that I didn't have to pay. And
Oh, okay.
a lot of it had to do with the write-offs that come with LLCs.
Cool. Well, Hugo, it's been fun talking to you. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can go learn more about you and the podcast and get in touch with you?
First of all, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening this far. Subscribe to Jack if you have not. You can follow me on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Stay Winning Pod. And then after this recording, actually, I'm not sure when you're uploading it, but I'll have my first video podcast up today on January
Oh,
23rd.
awesome.
So if hopefully people can subscribe and listen and take us from number 26 to number 20 this year.
Awesome. Well, Hugo, it's been great.
Jack, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.